And so I guess we should, I never put it in here, but, just the basics of what a troller does. People that are listening to this interview may just not know. So yeah, just the basics of someone who's never been on a fishing boat before.
Well, trolling basically is fishing with lines and hooks, either lures or live or herring, and each fish is brought in and landed individually, cleaned fairly soon after it's caught, and then belly iced. And so I may be prejudiced, but it's thought that troll caught fish is the best quality because it's not all scooped up in a net. Each fish is handled individually, cleaned, and taken care of fairly soon after it's caught. So there's a cockpit in the back of the boat. Most trollers are allowed to have 4 lines. Most trollers you see nowadays will just have 2 poles. There are some that used to have 4 poles, 2 on the bow and then 2 in the middle of the boat. But I don't think you see those as often. And I've never had bow poles. We've always just had the 2 poles, and then you run 2 lines off of each of those poles. And the piece of equipment on board that brings the line in and lets it out is called a gurdy. It's a hydraulic reel. And then each line you snap on leaders, and how far apart they are is determined by the length of the leaders. Typically, you use a longer leader for king salmon and a shorter leader for coho. And of course, the number of leaders is also dependent on how deep you're fishing. For king salmon, you would generally fish close to the bottom, so that really limits the amount of line that you can put out. Cohos you might find them more in the middle rather than at the bottom or the top. So you try to determine where the fish are and then fish at that depth. What else? Can you think of some questions?
How do you know if you have fish?
Oh, well, you can actually see the poles wiggle. My husband was not a fan of bells. Some people have bells on, so the bells jingle when there's a fish on. We did not have that. And a lot of times when you're fishing, you're catching scrap fish or fish that you don't want to catch, or jellyfish or kelp or whatever. So even if your pole doesn't wiggle, you need to run the gear on a fairly regular basis to make sure that the hooks are clean, because if they're not, they obviously won't catch a fish.